The houses in our neighborhood stood with uniform precision, like soldiers in a regimented parade, each one a mirror of its neighbor. It was a community that boasted a veneer of harmony, meticulously maintained lawns, and freshly painted fences, everything in its place, just as the HOA commanded, a place where conformity was king. And yet, there was one distinctive feature that disrupted the monotony. My Jeep. It sat defiantly, its rugged exterior and dirt-kissed tires a testament to adventures beyond the confines of suburban decorum. Karen, our self-appointed neighborhood watch and HOA enforcer, had developed a particular distaste for my Jeep. To her, it was a blemish on an otherwise immaculate canvas, a discordant note in her symphony of control. I saw it differently. Of course, to me, it was a symbol of freedom, a reminder of mountains yet to be climbed, and rivers yet to be forded. Her first volley was subtle. A polite note slipped under my windshield wiper, suggesting that vehicles should be in harmony with the neighborhood's aesthetic principles. I chuckled at the euphemism, aesthetic principles. Indeed, it was a minor irritation, like a gnat buzzing in the summer air, easily swatted away. Days passed, and the notes multiplied, each one more insistent than the last. Her words were like gnaw marks on the woodwork of my patience. Still, I remained calm, embracing the serenity of my own resolve. To each note, I responded with silence, a quiet power that seemed to unsettle her more than any confrontation could. Karen's persistence grew, fed by some internal need for order, or perhaps simply her desire to impose it. One morning, I found my Jeep marked with a fluorescent sticker, a warning of impending action, like a neon brand searing into my sense of autonomy. The sticker spoke of infractions and violations, but to me, it was a badge of honor. My response was deliberate. I let the sticker remain, a defiant statement in the face of perceived tyranny. Neighbors whispered, their eyes darting between my Jeep and Karen's ever-watchful windows. They saw a confrontation, brewing an epic clash between the desire for freedom and the hunger for control. Then came the day when Karen's ambitions exceeded her grasp. I returned from an evening walk to find her standing beside my Jeep, clipboard in hand, her gaze a mixture of triumph and accusation. The law was on her side, she believed, but she didn't know the law had been watching her too, silently. From the shadows of the parking lot, I felt the tension in the air, crackling like static before a storm. Karen met my eyes, a challenge there, but also something else, uncertainty. Perhaps she was a queen without her court, a ruler whose subjects whispered discontent, and there was the law, quietly observing, waiting for the right moment to reveal its hand. In that moment, with the sun setting in a blaze of orange and indigo, I felt the weight of inevitability. The quiet power I held was not in opposition, but in patience. The law was not my weapon, but my ally, its presence as discreet as a shadow, waiting to step into the light. And so, I waited, content in the knowledge that Karen's reign was a fleeting chapter in the story of this neighborhood, while my Jeep and I remained, unmoved, undeterred, and ready for whatever came next. The sun rose over our cul-de-sac, casting long shadows across manicured lawns and neatly painted mailboxes. Behind each pristine facade, something simmered, an undercurrent of ambition and control. Karen, with her impeccable timing and penchant for disruption, was back at it. A crisp white envelope slipped under my door, heralded the morning's intentions. It might as well have been a fox slipping into the henhouse. Inside, the letterhead bore the signature flourish of the HOA, a flourish I had come to associate with Karen's relentless pursuit of order. Her latest plot: a new decree: all vehicles must be parked precisely 6 inches from the curb. No more, no less. I chuckled, not with amusement, but with a hint of disdain. It was an impossible edict, designed, no doubt, with my Jeep in mind. The parking lot, a rectangular patch of asphalt, had become a stage for Karen's theater of control. My Jeep had always been her antagonist. Its rugged demeanor clashed with her vision of suburban perfection. She saw it as an invader. I saw it as freedom on four wheels. In her eyes, it dared to exist outside the bounds of her neatly ordered domain. I watched from my kitchen window as she patrolled, eagle-eyed and clipboard in hand, her gaze a laser of scrutiny. Residents passed her, heads down, as though caught in the gravitational pull of her authority. A small, ironical smile played on my lips. The neighborhood, once a tapestry of camaraderie, had become a chessboard, each move monitored and catalogued. Word spread quickly. Karen had begun issuing citations like confetti at a parade. My neighbors whispered, their voices hushed but urgent. Fences became confessional booths. Secrets passed over hedges in the guise of idle chat. You could almost see the ripple effect, like stones skipping across a pond. As fear and frustration spread, I felt their eyes on me as I strolled to the mailbox, a silent acknowledgement of our shared predicament. The quiet nods and furtive glances spoke volumes. We were pawns in her game. But there was a resolve building in the air, an unspoken agreement that this was a battle worth joining. The absurdity of it was almost poetic. Karen was a maestro in her own right, orchestrating chaos with the precision of a seasoned artist. But she overlooked one crucial detail: the silent watchers, cameras, perched like unseen sentinels, recording every move in high definition, a testament to vigilance and, perhaps, justice. As I considered this, a subtle shift occurred. Karen, unaware of the invisible eyes above, became more brazen. Her confidence swelled. Buoyed by imagined victories, she reveled in her dominion, oblivious to the fact that her audience had grown, a silent audience, but no less powerful. The irony was delicious. She who sought control was herself under surveillance. Even as she tightened her grip, the strings of her own fate were being woven by forces she could not perceive, her vision tunneled by ambition. She failed to notice how closely the law watched from its electronic perch. A storm gathered on the horizon, unseen yet inevitable, and as I watched the world beyond my window, the Jeep standing stalwart against her schemes, I realized that sometimes the most powerful act of defiance was simply to endure. Thus, I waited, calm and resolute. As the pieces continued to fall into place, my phone buzzed again, a quiet reminder that every detail mattered now. The digital archive grew, a gallery of timestamps and pixelated evidence. Karen, with her rigid posture and perpetual scowl, had become a fixture in my life. Like the relentless tick of a clock, her presence was steady, oppressive, and unavoidable. I watched from the window as the sun slid over the horizon, casting long shadows across the parking lot's cracked asphalt. My Jeep sat there, stoic and unyielding, innocent in its state of waiting. It had become a symbol, both of my freedom and of the battle I never sought, but now found myself enveloped within. The HOA's surveillance cameras had been my salvation, quiet sentinels. They captured snapshots of truth amid the orchestrated chaos Karen seemed to thrive upon. She had tried to play the role of conqueror, but the law, blind yet all-seeing, had been whispering in the background all along. Chronicles of her machinations unfolded in pixels and bytes. Each recording was a piece of a puzzle that slowly took shape, revealing a tapestry of intention and deception. I documented every encounter, her accusations as unfounded as they were fervent, her indignation a facade as thin as the veneer she wore at every HOA meeting. I knew her strategies now. Like a chess player memorizing an opponent's moves, the countermeasure was both simple and profound, a quiet defiance, not confrontation, but observation, empirical, methodical, as ironclad as the inevitable march of time. Karen underestimated silence. She saw it as weakness, not realizing it was a force unto itself, gathering strength, preparing to roar. Each passing day each recorded moment, built towards a crescendo she hadn't anticipated. In my mind, a plan formed, not one of revenge, no. That wasn't my style, but a plan of revelation. The truth, once unveiled, would serve as both judge and jury. I would stand back, let it unfold naturally, like a river flowing towards its course, unperturbed by the obstacles in its path. Still, there was a certain satisfaction in knowing what awaited. I imagined her face, the dawning realization when the board reviewed the footage, the irony that her own actions, meant to dismantle, would be her undoing. A meeting was called, an emergency session. The board gathered, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. Karen, oblivious, wore her usual air of self-righteous authority. It was almost tragic. Her grandeur built on the fragile foundation of a lie. Almost. The moment arrived, a silent symphony of anticipation. The screen flickered. The recordings played. My heart beat a steady rhythm. In sync with the unfolding truth, Karen's face, once so sure, now twisted in confusion, then outrage, and finally, resignation. In that room, under the fluorescent lights, justice wasn't loud or vindictive. It was quiet, absolute, and final. The irony of it all was not lost on me. The law had been watching, silent but vigilant. And now, it spoke through my evidence. A single line cut through the silence, a voice more resolute than I expected. And there it is, an echo of what had been and what would never be again. I stood, the calm. After the storm, Karen was left with echoes of her own making, and I with the reassuring silence of vindication. My Jeep, still there in the parking lot, was just a vehicle, but in that moment, it felt like so much more. The parking lot was a stage now, a theater of quiet dramas where our lives played out in the margins of suburbia. The light was fading. Not yet twilight, but the sun's stubborn refusal to let go painted everything in stark relief. Shadows stretched, elongating like the tension that had been growing for weeks, and like clockwork, Karen's silhouette appeared, cutting across the stage with her usual air of self-entitlement. I stood by my window, my vantage point the frame of an unfolding tableau. The Jeep sat there, innocent, yet a beacon of our neighborhood's unspoken discord. My mind wandered over the events that led here: Karen's insistence, her audacity, the invisible barrier she ignored, and the law, the omnipresent observer, waiting, watching the edges of this small world where fences marked boundaries and parking spots ignited wars. The neighbors had begun to notice Mrs. Jensen, 2 houses down, walked her dog with a curious caution now, eyes darting between Karen's house and the rest of us, her posture a question mark. Mr. Lewis, from across the street, who'd once greeted everyone with a jovial wave, now kept his hands in his pockets, an observer whose silence spoke volumes. The air was thick with collective awareness, but conversation was sparse, each of us unsure of our roles in this unscripted drama. The Jeep was more than metal and rubber. It was a symbol, Karen's eyes fixed on it as though it held the keys to her personal kingdom, a conquest that would affirm her dominion over this microcosm. But the law had its own gaze, unseen yet palpable, a presence felt in the subtle shifts in Karen's demeanor when she thought she wasn't being watched. There was a delicious irony in her obliviousness. Then it happened, a small catalyst but enough to break the silence. A soft, wet evening rain began to fall, the sky weeping in sympathetic discontent, and as the droplets patterned the ground, Karen made her move. The audacity was almost admirable, almost. Her fingers, quick like a magician's sleight of hand, found the door handle of the Jeep. Lightning crackled in the distance, a cosmic drum roll, the world's spotlight on her solitary act. But before she could perform her trick, the inevitable unfolded. A patrol car, always nearby these days, turned into the lot. its headlights slicing through the dusk like truth through deception. Her hand froze, a puppet with its strings abruptly tangled. The scene held firm, a photograph in time, capturing the precise moment when realization dawned. I watched from my window, the quiet witness to a predictable climax, the tension unraveled like a spool of thread, the neighbors' collective intake of breath almost audible, Karen's face twisted, a tempest of emotions battling for dominance. And then, the dialogue. That solitary line cut through the air with the finality of a gavel's strike. A voice, firm yet calm, as the officer stepped out. "Breaking the spell, ma'am. Step away from the vehicle." The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of justice, the culmination of every unspoken rule she'd tried to bend. In that moment, the rain continued its descent, washing over everything. A cleansing of sorts. Karen stepped back. Her defeat, a silent acknowledgement. The law had watched, and now it acted. Inside, I closed my eyes briefly, letting the irony settle like dust. The parking lot was just a parking lot again. The stage reset, the audience dismissed, and the Jeep, my steadfast sentinel, remained unmoved, a testament to patience and the quiet power of boundaries respected. The morning light was soft and golden, casting long shadows across the asphalt in the community parking lot. It was the calm before the storm, or rather, the calm before justice. Karen's desperation to control every inch of her surroundings had led her down a path that was as tangled as her overplanned neighborhood events. I watched from my kitchen window, sipping coffee as she attempted to orchestrate a new plan. Her phone glued to her ear, she gestured wildly, oblivious to the world watching her. Her plans to commandeer my Jeep had become the talk of the condominium. And this time, her audience was not just my neighbors. The law was already watching, quietly, from a distance. Unmarked cars that blended seamlessly into suburban life had taken position around the perimeter. Karen was too wrapped in her self-made bubble of authority to notice the shift in the air. Her confidence was a fragile thing, like a skyscraper of playing cards stacked against the wind. Her attempts to peddle influence over my vehicle had left a bitter taste. But bitterness, I'd learned, could be a powerful motivator. Instead of confronting her in the street, with the neighbors as our jury, I had taken to a path carved by patience and precision. A path that did not blaze with the immediacy of confrontation, but simmered with the quiet resolve of justice. Karen's vendetta against my Jeep was not an isolated incident. It was a thread in a much larger tapestry of neighborhood grievances. I had documented each infraction, each petty attempt at dominance, in meticulous detail, timestamps, photographs, video clips. It was not about the Jeep alone. It was about boundaries, respect, the quiet dignity of individual rights. The rustle of paper felt satisfying under my fingertips as I reviewed the documents, legal complaints, witness statements, all neatly stacked and ready to serve their purpose. They were my shield and sword, invisible under the mundane guise of community bylaws. As the clock ticked toward noon, the crescendo built, a distinct note of irony wove through the air. Karen, who had thrived in an ecosystem of intimidation and control, was about to meet an opponent she couldn't charm or bully. The law was an impartial force, indifferent to her social clout. The officers approached her. Their movements were deliberate, their presence understated yet commanding. Karen's facade of calm crumbled like brittle leaves underfoot as they engaged her in conversation. Her voice, usually a sharp instrument, now faltered and faded against the authoritative murmur of the law. From my vantage point, I could almost hear the crack of her veneer. A single line of dialogue drifted through the air, a mere whisper, but laden with finality. "Ma'am, we need to talk about your behavior." Powerful, revealing, it was the turning point, the axis upon which her world tipped. Karen's reign over the parking lot was over. I watched as her shoulders slumped, her protests mere echoes of her once commanding directives. The world outside my window moved on, indifferent to the quiet drama that had unfolded. A deep breath filled my lungs, heavy with the knowledge that justice, though slow, had finally unfurled its wings. The Jeep remained where it belonged, a symbol of my quiet rebellion against the tyranny of entitlement. The law had watched, it had acted, and now peace reclaimed the parking lot, as gentle as the morning light. The parking lot lay still beneath the soft glow of the streetlights, an artificial moon casting long shadows across cracked asphalt. My breath formed little clouds of fog in the crisp evening air, each exhale a quiet reminder of the tension wrapping itself tightly around the night. The Jeep stood in its usual spot, a silent sentinel, sturdy and unyielding, its dark silhouette a counterpoint to the chaos Karen had tried to weave. It was a strange feeling, standing there in the aftermath of her grandiose plans, the very air buzzing with the quiet resolution of a community slowly reclaiming its peace. The law, with its quiet, watchful eyes, had seen more than I ever could from the vantage point of my window, where I'd spent countless nights observing the comings and goings across our small stretch of pavement. Karen had always been a force. Her energy, like a storm, demanded attention with a kind of magnetic negativity that pulled at the edges of civility, threatening to unravel the delicate threads binding our community. But tonight, those threads held firm, stronger than she anticipated, stronger than she was. I moved towards the Jeep, each step a quiet declaration of resolve. The vehicle was more than metal and rubber. It was a testament to survival, a relic of my journey through the unpredictable labyrinth of life, Karen's attempts to claim it, to twist the narrative to her own chaotic ends, were thwarted by the very watchman she sought to evade. The irony was almost poetic. In the flickering light, I could see the telltale signs of her meddling, the faint smudges where she'd pried and pushed, the misplaced attempts to conquer something that wasn't hers to take. Her failure was etched into the very surface of the Jeep, a testament to her hubris and my quiet perseverance. The law had arrived discreetly, their presence an unspoken reassurance. I'd watched as they approached Karen, her bravado unraveling with each passing moment. There was a strange satisfaction in witnessing the inevitable, a slow-motion victory that required no fanfare, no loud proclamations, just the quiet, inevitable turning of justice's wheel. Karen's retreat was less of a departure and more of an extraction, her protestations drowned by the quiet hum of authority that encircled her, a barrier she could not breach. And as her figure faded into the shadows beyond the parking lot, I felt a weight lift, the air a little less charged with her frenetic energy. This was not just a victory for me, but for every whispered complaint, every sidelong glance exchanged over cracked fences and small gatherings. The community had endured, and in enduring, found its voice again, a quiet, powerful undercurrent of unity that Karen's tempest had failed to sweep away. I turned back to my Jeep, the resilient symbol of this small triumph. It gleamed under the streetlights, a steadfast companion in the silent night. The parking lot, once more a neutral ground, held a different kind of promise now, a promise of peace, of resolve, and of the quiet strength that comes from standing firm in the face of chaos. It was over, yes, but more importantly, it had just begun a new understanding, a shared history woven through the fabric of our lives, binding us tighter than before. Together, we had watched, waited, and finally acted, and now, as the night settled around me, I knew this was a story we'd tell with quiet smiles and knowing glances, a testament to our shared resilience.